Welcome back to Korsgaard's commentary, my dear viewers, and Die Hard. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more revered name in action cinema than the Die Hard series. Kicking off in 1988 with a movie about cop John McClane trying to save his estranged wife from terrorists in Los Angeles skyscraper, it became an almost instant classic, revered for its practical effects, tense and brutal action scenes, and a down-to-earth lead in smart-mouthed cop John McClane. Even today, it's hailed as a classic, one of the greatest action movies of all time, and has launched a score of imitators, including a franchise of its own. Most recently, today's A Good Day to Die Hard. Following the success of 2006 sequel Live Free or Die Hard, almost immediately a sequel was greenlit, with a half-dozen concepts rumored to be the focus of the next film. These ranged to a return to the more humble roots of the series following the more fantastic elements of Live Free or Die Hard, to a rumored Die Hard 24 crossover that would have had John McClane and Jack Bauer fighting terrorists together. Eventually, though, after several tossed-out scripts and concepts, and several directors and screenwriters leaving the project, the film formulated as a Moscow-based sequel which would see John McClane team up with his estranged son. While I was worried about the production team, which has the director behind two of the worst remakes of the last decade and the worst non-U-Ball video game movie ever made, and the screenwriter that nearly killed the X-Men franchise, I never doubted I would see it. Even with all the things I didn't like about Live Free or Die Hard, it was still a fun movie. It's Die Hard. What could go wrong? So, is John McClane back with a vengeance? Or is this cowboy just too old for this shit? Yell yippee-ki-yay and join me as I review A Good Day to Die Hard. The movie opens in Moscow with Jack McClane, son of John McClane, getting involved in a Russian political feud between a hardliner defense minister and a whistleblower dissident, culminating in him agreeing to testify against the dissident in exchange for leniency. Enter Daddy John McClane, who, hoping to reapproach the estranged son and help him out of this mess in any way he can, soon gets involved in conspiracy himself, as the two McClanes soon get involved in a spider's web of intrigue that will drive father and son together out of necessity. And then to burn down the web in true McClane fashion with a string of gunfights, car chases, and explosive confrontations that promises to be John McClane's highest stakes confrontation yet. It was by about the 20-minute mark when I finally realized just what a mess I was in for. Having sat through what had to have been 20 minutes of exposition, setup, and about 70% of the shots used in the trailers, during an extended car chase scene between a strange armored car piloted by one of our movie villains, and a couple of cars driven by both McClanes, when I was hit by something you should never be struck by in an action movie. Boredom. Literally, there is nothing in the movie to keep you interested, excited, or even provide any sort of tension. I found myself checking my phone more than the screen. You could probably have walked out of the movie and walked back in 30 minutes later and not missed a thing. This is largely in part thanks to the script, which provides a combination of one of the worst conspiracy thrillers put to film in the last decade, and dialogue so bad that I'd lost feeling in my face by the 30-minute mark thanks to all my cringing. The conspiracy that forms the nexus of the film's plot is so sloppily handled, poorly executed, that not only does it damage the tension of the film and the villains, but at times it treads territory so offensive, I wonder just how the hell they got it past the censors. To give you an idea, it turns out the Chernobyl disaster wasn't caused by shoddy Soviet workmanship or faulty nuclear power, but in an effort to steal plutonium and sell it on the black market. It's the kind of audacious offensiveness you almost have to respect once you pick your jaw up off the floor. Worse, there are so many attempted twists and switcheroos that not only does it make what little plot there is dissolve into nothingness, but it points out just how utterly preposterous the entire thing is. Everything from the motives to the threat is left so convoluted that you can literally point out every plot hole as they come. Ranging from how John McClane finds out his son is in the CIA, to how a 500-mile drive from Moscow to Chernobyl not only takes one night, but as Chernobyl switched locations from Ukraine to Russia. This is made all the worse by the dialogue, which may have confirmed screenwriter Skip Woods has never spoken to an actual human being in his life. This ranges from having the very annoying cab driver sing a number of songs for 3 minutes, to John McClane screaming that he's on vacation, despite the fact he's not on vacation, and doing it repeated times as if it's supposed to get better with every repeated use. The worst, though, is the attempted story thread concerning John McClane and Jack McClane having a father-son reapproachment, an attempt to give the movie pathos, and instead is handled with all the nuance of a lobotomized ape playing a piano. All around, almost every line spoken has the effect of further making the film unwatchable. Yet another problem both hindered and enabled by the god-awful story and script is that all the characters are terrible. And on a related note, so is the acting. And as much as it breaks my heart to say it, yes, that includes Bruce Willis as John McClane, who has not only continued the trend from the last film, where McClane is now a superhero impervious to all signs of damage, but in a strange twist, offers a very underwhelming performance, and at times it feels like Willis and McClane were an afterthought in the movie. He's either stuck playing second fiddle to Courtney or used for very bad humor. Worse, where villains have always been a strong point of the franchise, here we're offered a weak string of expendable Russian stereotypes that, aside from the token femme fatale, are all played by Germans or Hungarians, and played so horribly and stereotypically, I wouldn't blame Russia if they wanted to restart the Cold War after this. When I called them expendable, that wasn't just a metaphor. The villains are never made clear, and are treated to a succession of baddies who explain who they are and what they're doing there, before being offed unceremoniously in the next twist. As if we needed another reminder that we'd gone from Alan Rickman and Jeremy Irons to Boris and Natasha. Also, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, whose breakout role was in the last film, after headlining a string of bombs and duds, returns for a cameo in what may be her last performance in a major film. About the one positive point of the film I can probably think of is Jai Courtney, who does the best he can with an awful script to make Jack McClane the, well, best character of the movie. Between this and his turn as a supporting villain in Jack Reacher, Courtney has proven he has the charisma and chops to be one of the few young actors who can be an action star. But he'll need a hell of a lot better roles than this if he ever wants to see that happen. Sadly and somewhat shockingly, it only gets worse from here. So for all of you hoping that you'd at least get some decent action scenes out of a movie ticket, let me dispel that hope here and now. Lest we forget, the director is John Moore, who does all he can to show just what a stupid choice of letting him direct was, by offering some of the worst editing and directing choices I've seen in years. This ranges from having Moscow showcased in multiple aerial shots to be Budapest, a number of clunky scene transitions, some of which create yet more plot holes, shaky cam galore, and worst of all, some of the worst action scenes in recent memory. That's right, a Die Hard movie where the action scenes are the worst part of the movie. I'm gonna let that sink in for a moment. Yeah, you see this? This is basically the entire movie. The entire movie, shot like this. Now, back to the action scenes. These range from the opening chase scene across not Moscow, which may be the clumsiest chase scenes I've seen in a long time, a number of shootouts in which people fire at each other at point-blank range without taking cover, in which no one gets shot, and a finale which, once again, I want to point out, takes place in Chernobyl, combines some of the worst CGI and some of the worst slow-mo effects, combined together to stunningly bad effect. The original Die Hard movie was one of the first movies to use tactics in its action sequences, and is even today hailed as a masterpiece of practical effects and action choreography. A Good Day to Die Hard should serve as a showcase of all the wrong ways to do an action scene. Once again, how the mighty have fallen. I watched the movie over a week ago, and even right now, I am still appalled at just how much went wrong with the movie. The direction and execution of the film is one of the worst hack jobs in recent memory. It boasts a script so bad it's like Stephenie Meyer tried to write a spy thriller, and its feeble attempts to provide a story full of intrigue and suspense fell flat on its face like a direct-to-DVD Bourne knockoff. The camera work and editing are an absolute nightmare, and the only thing saving it from having the worst action scenes in a film I've reviewed since starting my website are the existence of Battleship and Dragon Ball Evolution. Its uncomfortably tasteless portrayal of the Russian people would make Ayn Rand feel sorry for them, and a tie-in with the Chernobyl disaster that is as appalling as the three-eyed deer that resulted from it. Worst of all is that it's a die-hard movie that not for one single instant feels like a part of the franchise. Hell, John McClane is barely in it, and even Bruce Willis looks a little ashamed when he says, "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker," because even he seems to realize just how far they've fallen. As a close to lifelong fan of the Die Hard franchise, please understand nearly every fiber of my being wants to gag when I say this. I hated a Die Hard movie. You aren't the only ones that had to do a double take watching that, I'm sure, I promise. A Good Day to Die Hard was more than just disappointing. It's an irredeemably bad movie, one made all the more infuriating when you realize it has the gall to call itself a Die Hard movie. It's a textbook example of a lazily made cash-in on a sequel. One where not even the presence of Bruce Willis and the Die Hard name on the moniker. You could be forgiven for thinking it was a direct-to-DVD off-brand knockoff mockbuster. Not only do I not recommend the movie, I urge any true Die Hard fan to not only avoid seeing it, but to write 20th Century Fox a number of angry letters that they would allow such a cinematic abomination to taint the name and reputation of the Die Hard franchise. I don't think I've been this heartbroken by a dud of a sequel since The Dark Knight Rises. I've heard people call this the Superman 4 or Rocky 5 of the Die Hard movies, but given the screenwriter, I think it's more appropriate to call this the X-Men Origins Wolverine of the Die Hard franchise. And yes, it may just be worse in terms of where it leaves the series. This is such a mess, such a disappointment, such a massive misstep, that I'm scrambling to think of how the franchise can recover from this. John McClane deserves a hell of a lot better, and so do the moviegoers. Until next time, this is Korsgaard. We're gonna die.